إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. We give praise and thanks to Almighty Allah. We ask Him to shower His blessings upon the noblest of mankind, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, members of His household, His companions, and all those who have stood, are standing, and will come to stand on this Sirat al-Mustaqim. Alhamdulillah. So we took the categories of people who receive zakah. How many are they in number? How many are they in number? Anybody? Sajala.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We said there are 8 of them in number.
Okay, barakallah.
Based on Surah At-Tabeeb verse 16, inshallah.
Barakallah. So those 8 mentioned there. Now, Madam Mujib, what are the prerequisites for paying zakat? The things that must be present in the person who wants to extract zakat from. How many are those things?
I'm not sure the number, but I think about 8 as well, of which Islam is the first.
Okay, barakallah fikum. So there are 8. I just want to put those. You can mute your mic, barakallah. I just want to let those numbers stick in our minds. 8 people receive. 8 things must be present in the person that gives. Okay, so we told us last class that yes, like you said, Islam is the first of those things. Freedom, not being a slave, is the next. Then it is on certain types of wealth, not all types of wealth. That type of wealth that qualifies for zakah must be equal to the nisab. That is the 4th thing. The 5th thing is that it must have ownership. That type of wealth that reaches the nisab must belong to one person. Must belong to one person. If you have something that is a communal property, the part that is zakatable is that which belongs to each individual in the group and reaches the nisab. So number 6 is that this person that owns it must own it 100%. It's just it's close in meaning to the first. He owns it 100% and has 100% jurisdiction on it. He may own it 100% and the fund has been frozen by the government, for instance. Then this is not, zakatable. He doesn't have 100% jurisdiction on it. He might own it, but it's in someone else's hands. The person owes him money. Or the person may have just told him the money had never been his, but the person had told him, I am going to give you 1,000,000 dirhams. So until the money comes into his possession and he exercises 100% jurisdiction on it, then he is not zakatable. Zakat cannot be extracted, from him. Number 7, this is under the general principle of La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. Allah does not burden the soul beyond what he can, bear. So if somebody does not have the capability to exercise jurisdiction, to give you out of what you want, to give you what you want in zakah, then there's no burden placed on him. And finally, number 8 is persistence of the zakah till it is paid. Persistence of the zakat till it's paid is in 2 forms. Persistent till the time when extracting zakat from it will be due, like produce, farm produce, for instance. It is when they are harvested. So if the farm produce persists, doesn't get destroyed up until the time when it is harvested, then this is one stage. Then the second stage is when it is submitted to zakah. So it should persist till that time also. So these are the 8. So 8 people received, 8 things are present in the one that gives the zakah. So inshallah, we'll go back to the book and I'll take those things.
Doctor, sorry, I wish to ask a question if you don't mind.
Please go ahead.
So it's to clarify something I'm not sure. I don't remember if we discussed in class, and it's related to this thing of complete ownership. So I came across a question recently where someone was asking, and the answer wasn't provided really, that if one has money in a cooperative, which is taken as, how cooperative, assuming everything else is halal, everything in the cooperative is there, no issues, if any. And he has wealth in the cooperative, and the knowledge is that it takes until, let's say Ramadan, before he takes his own share of the cooperative, of his own contribution, which is usually going to be something around, it's going to be a multiplication of what you have contributed so far to that cooperative. So if, let's say in Rabi al-Awwal, your nisab, you have gotten enough wealth, reaching the zakah, the nisab part for zakah, include that with your knowledge of that wealth includes what you have saved in that cooperative. But the reality of that cooperative is that you are not, except for emergencies, to take from that money until the date for your own share comes. What's the situation of one's ownership in this respect, and is the zakat calculated in this based on that kind of cooperative savings? And another thing related to this question, if it's not too much, is my understanding, let me put it this way, of how wealth is calculated in, should I say, the modern time as well, like all these Forbes valuation of millionaires, billionaires. It seems to be that the valuation is also based on the worth of their companies, which I understand to not be exactly wealth they have in bank, but some wealth that they are worth. But I do understand that to also be something they have, should I say, full ownership of, because someone can be worth 5 billion because of the worth of a big company he has. But when he wants to sell that company, for instance, and get the real money that we will have ownership on, if I understand it well, the amounts may vary depending on different considerations. So these 2 things around ownership, the cooperative aspect, which is your contributions, that is still clearer, as well as this valuation of one's wealth based on someone's equity in companies. How are these related to, or how might this be related to ownership that might affect the zakat that they will pay? Jazakallahu khairan.
Barakallahu fikum. Now, in Islam, there is no compulsion. There's no compulsory zakat to be paid. Zakat, of course, is compulsory. It's just to reiterate the points of compulsion. There's no compulsory zakat to be paid on potential income. It is when the income lands. I'm taking the second question first, inshallah. Now, it is when that income arrives, that is when it is real. That is when it will either become zakatable or begin its tenure or being counted towards extracting zakat from it. If it is something that you have to pay zakat immediately you gain possession of it, then you are to pay zakat immediately it becomes due. Immediately you will gain possession of it. If it is something that you begin to count a year from the time when you gain possession of it, then immediately you gain possession of it, mark the date, then a year, lunar calendar year from that is when you pay the zakat. So the real wealth that is zakatable. Remember, certain types of wealth, and this is real wealth that is what Islam calculates. In all these other financial calculations, they calculate a lot of things that are potential wealth and non-tangible things. For instance, the name of the person, the brand of the person, has a value, and they put a price to that. But it doesn't mean that that person has the cash right there and then. So that Islam doesn't look at that, even though people and in economics and other things like that, they look at that. That does not concern Islam. What concerns Islam is that which is present, to the extent that there's different opinion among the scholars with respect to money that you are owed. Are you to pay zakah on it when it's not in your possession? The more correct opinion, as we get to when we reach that topic, is that there's no zakah on you, upon it. And when we say there's no zakah on you, meaning it's not compulsory for you to pay zakah on it, because we have learned that you can pay zakah even if it is not compulsory, and you can pay your zakah in advance. So if you can pay your zakat of years in advance, like the Prophet ﷺ's uncle Al-Abbas did by paying 2 years zakat in advance, then it means that you can also pay zakat in advance of your receiving the the debt from the person. So that is and whenever you pay your zakat in advance, remember, it's not something that the wealth is not something that has landed. It's when it gets to a 1 year, when it's real due time, you now assess what I gave in advance last year. Was a projection to this year. Now today there is reality. So reality minus projection, is it equal to 0? If it is equal to 0, then there's nothing due upon you. Reality now minus projection that you did when you paid in advance, if you find that the reality is above that your projection, then you have to balance up what is left. If reality is lower, then you decide, do I want to convert what was in excess that I projected as sadaqah, or do I want to ask the zakat people to subtract it from my zakat next year? So that's the that's if they're collecting the zakat from you, or you do that yourself if you're the one giving the zakat to the end recipients yourself. So those are the options with that. I believe question 2 is taken care of. Number 3, question number 1 is with regards to someone who has wealth in a zakat fund. It's the same in a cooperative fund. It's the same thing as having shares or any other share in a business concern, or any other concern that generates wealth for one. So the thing is that the thing that is zakatable is the part that is yours whenever zakat is due on it. So if you have zakat from different sources of revenue, then you should do the zakat independently. You must do the zakat independently if those sources of revenue are not groupable. For instance, so that this tells us that there are some types of wealth that their zakat are groupable. There are some that are not. So for instance, a groupable one, I have trade goods. The zakat on them is 2.5%. I have fiat money, banknotes and coins. The zakat on it is 2.5%. You know, I have gold that is at or above the nisab. The zakat on it is 2.5%. So I can combine the value of my gold or silver, not gold and silver. You can't combine gold, the weight of gold and the weight of silver that you have. They are not groupable. However, you can combine gold and trade goods and fiat money, just as you can combine silver and trade goods and fiat money. So you can group those together and do your zakat. But for things that are not combinable, I have sheep, I have cows. The zakat on sheep is different from the zakat on cows, so they are not groupable. And like that. So now, if you have wealth that is groupable with that, you know, in the cooperative, the first question you ask yourself is the one that is independent of the group that I have, either in a cooperative or any other business concern as you described, has it attained, does it on itself reach the nisab? If it reaches the nisab, remove complexity by paying zakah on that one. Then you now focus on the one for, you know, that is in other business concerns. If not, if it doesn't reach zakat on its own, then you now look at the one in the cooperative. What is your own share in it, and when will it be due? If as you described, you are permitted to extract, to take money from it in an emergency, then zakah is, can qualify as an emergency based on what you agreed on. If extracting due to zakah is permitted, then of course you extract your share, when it's time to pay zakah, and you join it to what you have of the same groupable wealth, and if it is up to the nisab, you pay your zakah on that. If it is not the case, i.e., you are not allowed to remove it, zakah is not one of the paying zakah is not one of the reasons that they allow you to pull out. Rather, it is at fixed terms that has been explained, pre-agreed, that you are to extract it. Then you wait until what is compulsory on you is to wait until the money is due. That money is like money that you loaned out. You don't have access to it. Remember, at-tasarruf at-tam, al-milk at-tam, full ownership and free, unrestricted, jurisdiction over the property is a requirement. One of what we counted as 8 prerequisites that must be present in the one that you want to extract zakat from. So now you are the one who wants to extract the zakat from. This wealth that is in the hands of other people, not yours, you can't extract it. So there's no zakat compulsory for you to pay. However, can you do that which is mustahab by estimating what you get and paying it? Of course, we've explained that you can do that. So the more correct opinion of the scholars is that a company is not to pay zakah, is that one, the company is not an animate thing. It's not a human being that you now say, okay, is he a Muslim or a kafir? So there's no thing on that. Is not one of those who answers. That company is not one of those that will answer for their deeds yawm al-qiyamah. So it is Islam is compulsory as one of the prerequisites for this hurriya. It's owned. The company is property itself. And remember, a slave cannot pay property. So the company is owned by people. So property cannot pay, zakat. So that is one. Then, when you take zakat from a company, you will be harming two groups of people. In addition to you not applying the laws of zakat to the latter, you will be harming two groups of people. One group are those that you will extract it from. Because you're extracting from the company, then there will be people, or there may be people, whose share does not reach the nisab. But at the company level, the wealth of the company owned by these multiple people, the wealth is in excess of the nisab. But you'll be harming these people because reaching the nisab is one of those 8 things that we, highlighted, the scholars highlighted as prerequisites that must be present in someone before you extract zakah from him. Now you're extracting the zakah in the absence of this, prerequisite. The second group of people that you will be hurting are the recipients. And this goes against the premise of those group of scholars, rahimahumullah, who favor, extracting zakah from the company. One of their goals is so that the recipients will benefit. But let's look at an instance. If you have 40 to 120 sheep, you are going to pay only 1 sheep. The minimum threshold is 40. But 41, 50, 60, 70, 100, 120, it is still 1 sheep that you pay. So let's say we have a company, 3 of us. We set up a livestock company and we own sheep, and the total number of sheep owned by our company is 120. How many sheep do we pay? We pay only 1. Whereas if we looked at what each person owns, let's say we own 40 each, then in that case, the recipients will get 1 sheep out of my 40, 1 sheep out of your 40, 1 sheep out of his sheep. That'll be 3. So we shortchange them, by extracting only 1, because rather than extracting zakah from the individuals, we're extracting zakah from the company. So this is, one of the, of course, there are other instances where the zakah is not a range, like in fiat money and things like that, where, you would, there won't be this obvious, deprivation of the recipients. But our goal at all times is to implement the text of the Sharia to the latter, so that we know that we are not, shortchanging anybody, especially in the presence of the hadith of Prophet ﷺ, when he warned Mu'adh bin Jabal, radiyallahu anhu, he said, فَاتَّقُوا دَعْوَةَ al-mazlum, and fear the curse of the one who has been, cheated, because there's no hijab between it and Allah. It's free acceptance. So that is the barakallah. So the Sheikh,
I have a question too, if time permits us.
Fadl.
Okay. So inshallah, alhamdulillah, I think we spent some time last week and the week before in defining zakat. So I was just curious, to know if any of the big sheikhs in the past have crafted together or put together a definition similar to the way we have just done in the last 2 weeks, and if we have any access to that.
Barakallahu fikum. I think we did that last week. We went through a couple of definitions given by many of the great scholars of the past up until now in terms of the definition of zakah. So we now put our definition was an amalgamation of their definitions, such that this person's definition was missing something, we added it. That person's definition was missing something, we added it. Let me see if, do we remember that, or we should go back to, looking at those definitions again?
Yes, I remember, I remember that we talked about it, but I guess my real question is, should we really do that, quote and unquote, if the big sheikhs have said this is the definition and we are putting together another definition, just out of curiosity.
Okay, barakallah. This is istilah, definitions and technical words that are not directly as put down, revealed by the Quran, revealed in the Quran or the Hadith. So there's jurisdiction, you can do as it whatever you want with it. The scholars will say la mushahata fil-istilah. You can't hold somebody for the terminology he uses or something like that, once it is not something that was revealed in Quran and Hadith. So each person will do his own. So what you will hold someone for is if they in his definition include something that is contrary to Islam or the Sharia. This definition that you gave is faulty because of this and that. So, but in terms of defining things or anything like that, the scholars have that maxim that they use, la mushahata fil-istilah. Anybody can whatever. Before Imam Tirmidhi came, hadith were either sahih or da'if. Imam Tirmidhi came and he brought the category Hasan and other terminologies, Hasan Gharib, and other definitions like that. So the Bukhari came, brought his own. Muslim came, brought his own. So anybody can bring anything. The definition or the terminology is not what is important. What is important is its congruence to the material of the Sharia, and that it should not at any point in time, go against those definitions. So I hope that is clear.
Yes.
Now, so al-mabhath al-khamis, the Sheikh rahimahullah says, the fifth subsection says shurut al-wujub al-zakat. They said it's 5 here. We expanded it to, as we explained, to make 8. So that's this is exactly what we're talking about. When there are certain things hidden within certain things, we bring them out, to try to bring them out so that it is clear to everyone that looks at them. So he said the first is Islam. We've talked about Islam. We've talked about the evidence for that. The evidence that it should be collected only from a Muslim is where Allah says, وَمَا مَنَعَهُمْ أَن تُقْبَلَ مِنْهُمْ نَفَقَاتُهُمْ إِلَّا أَنَّهُمْ كَفَرُوا بِاللَّهِ. There's nothing that prevented that their zakat should be accepted from them, except that they disbelieved in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa bi rasulih, and in his messenger, وَلَا يَأْتُونَ الصَّلَاةِ, and they will not come for salah. This is a reference to the munafiqun. They paid the zakah. The Prophet ﷺ, accepted it from them. However, Allah did not accept it from them. The Prophet ﷺ accepted it from them because they exhibited Islam outwardly. Anybody that we treat people based on their outward, disposition and interactions. So until what is hidden becomes clear to us, then things that become clear to us is now apparent, So, but for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything is apparent. Everything is apparent. Lahu ilmul ghaib wa shahada. Huwa alimul ghaib wa shahada. Wala ya'tuna as-salata illa wa hum kusala. They will not come to salah except that they do so lazily. وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كَارِهُونَ, and they will not spend whether sadaqah or zakah except so that people will see them, because they are not hoping for anything from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't believe Allah exists. They believe that it is just this world, whether they are munafiqun or they are kuffar, or they are kuffar that don't hide their kufr. They are one and the same. They don't believe in Allah. They don't believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or what he was sent with. Neither do they believe that there will be a time when they will be raised and given recompense of their deeds. They do not believe in any of that. So when they spend, they are only spending for the worldly things so that people will see that. When the Muslims see them, if there's any benefit that they give Muslims who spend, then the Muslims will give them. If there's any harm that is warded off Muslims, then they'll benefit from that. So this is the reason why, the munafiqun and the kuffar, this is why they spend. So Allah does not accept sadaqah from them. He does not accept sadaqah from them. So the Muslims, when it is apparent to them, so someone's kufr is apparent to them, that they don't accept, zakah from, such a person. And also another evidence is that Allah says, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا. Take from their wealth zakah to purify them, by it. So we gave an example last week of someone who feces splashed on his cloth. That cloth can be, purified by washing off the feces. But the feces itself, wash it as many times as you want, it will remain feces. To remain feces, it will never be pure, except it transforms into something else, not by washing. So that sadaqah only purifies the Muslim who, by virtue of his transactions, earned certain filth that clinged onto him. That when he pays zakah, he is cleansed off of all this. But the kafir is not that filth clinged onto him. He himself is filth. As Allah says, innamal mushrikina najasun. That the idolaters are najas. Najasa. Filth. So they are paying zakah is like the case of feces, someone trying to wash feces clean. Collects zakah every day of the year from them. It will not cleanse them. Now, so this is al-mabhath. So the first shurut is, the first shart rather from the shurut is Islam. Number two is al-hurriya. The person must be free, because one who is not free is the property of other than himself. Whatever he owns is the property of that person. As the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, he said, Man ibta'a nakhlan, whoever buys a date palm tree, ba'da an tu'abbar, after someone has done the work of pollinating that date palm tree, fathamaratuha, then the reward of that work, and which is the fruits that come out of that the date palm tree, lil ba'i', is for the one who did that work. Illa, that is the seller, illa an yashtarit al-mubta', except that the buyer stipulates it as a condition that I'll only buy this a date palm from it if whatever fruit comes out before I pollinate it, or I don't put, or I pollinate it, comes to me. If the seller agrees, then there's no problem. He has given up his right. But by default, he is the one who owns it, just like he owned the date palm itself. So he has a right to sell it or gift it, just as he did with the date palm. وَمَنِ ابْتَاعَ عَبْدًا, and whoever sells a slave, وَلَهُ مَالٌ, and that slave has wealth on him, فَمَالُهُ لِلَّذِي بَاعَهُ إِلَّا يَشْتَرِطَ الْمُبْتَاعَ, the money on the slave belongs to the seller, except the buyer stipulates. So it's like you buy a car, you sell a car, and in the glove compartment, the buyer finds money. People don't sell cars with money in the glove compartment. The money in the glove compartment belongs to the seller. So you return it. But if at the point of selling, both parties knew it was there, and they agreed that the car and the money is this price, then it belongs to the buyer in that case. So because of this, that maluhu lil ladhi ba'ahu, the money on the slave belongs to the one who owns it, then it shows that the slave doesn't have any wealth of his own. Doesn't have any wealth of his own. So this is the second, prerequisite, freedom. The third is milk nisab. This wealth that we're talking about that is zakatable must reach the nisab. It must reach the nisab. Now, so the Prophet ﷺ, as evidence, said, "Laysa fima duna khamsatin awsuqin sadaqa." If you have less than 5 awsuq of farm produce, then there's no sadaqah on it. So he set 5 awsuq as the threshold, as the nisab. So therefore we know that the things that we give in zakah have a threshold that they must attain. Once they reach that threshold or surpass it, then they are zakatable. It says, "Wala fima duna khamsati dawdin sadaqa." Less than 5 camels, there's no sadaqa, i.e. compulsory sadaqa, meaning zakah. "Wala fima duna khamsati awaq sadaqa." So 5 awaq is the minimum for silver, which is the most common grammage is 595 grams. That once you have that or above, then you pay zakah. Below it, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Wala," there's no zakah on anything less than that. So the Prophet ﷺ in this hadith set the nisab for these things, and it is compulsory that those things must be present before we extract zakah from the person. And Prophet ﷺ said in another, he said, "Fa-idha kanat laka mi'ata dirham." If you have 200 dirham, which is the same thing as the 595 grams of gold, وَحَالَ عَلَيْهَا الْحَوْلِ, and 1 year passes on it, فَفِيهَا خَمْسَةُ دَرَاهِمْ, then you have فَفِيهَا خَمْسَةُ دَرَاهِمْ وَلَيْسَ عَلَيْكَ شَيْءٍ يعني في الذهب. Okay, now فَفِيهَا خَمْسَةُ دَرَاهِمْ, then you have to pay 5. So you have 200 and you are paying 5. So that is what? 1/40, 2.5%. You have 200 and you are paying 5. So that is 1/40, which is 2.5% as zakah. But the threshold, the nisab, the Prophet ﷺ said, for silver, it is 5 awaq, otherwise called 20 in another scale, 200 dirhams. That is dirham at the time of Prophet ﷺ, and not the dirhams I will spend now. So he said, "Walaysa alayka shay," and there's nothing upon you, yani fi-l-Dhahab, with respect to gold, hatta yakun laka 20 dinar, until you have the equivalent of 20 dinar of gold. فَإِذَا كَانَ لَكَ 20 dinar, if you have 20 dinar, وَحَالَ عَلَيْهَا الْحَوْلِ فَفِيهَا نِصْفُ dinar. If you have 20 dinar and 1 year passes over it in your possession, then you have to pay in zakat half of a dinar. Again, 1/40 equals 2.5%. So this is so this is evidence for the nisab. So everything that you pay zakat on, except with an exception, you are to they have a nisab. But For rikaz, which you also pay zakat on, you don't have a nisab for it. Whenever you find it, you pay 1/5 of it. You pay 1/5 of it, 20%. That's it. Whatever quantity it is, it's not. The Sharia does not look at that. Now, Ashart al-Rabi', the fourth prerequisite that must be present in the one who wants to extract zakat from is istiqrar al-milk, is the perpetuation of the continuity of the ownership. بأن يكون المالك للشيء يملكه ملكا مستقرا, such that the one who owns this money owns it, definitively. He owns it 100%. ويعبر عن هذا الشرط أيضا بتمام الملك, and they call this perfect ownership, 100% ownership. ومعنى تمام الملك أن لا يتعلق به حق غيره. And what 100% ownership means, the Sheikh Rahimahullah says, Sheikh Sa'id ibn Wahb al-Qahtaaniy, he says, is that the right of anyone should not be mixed with that money. Ashart al-Rabi' istiqrar al-milk. So it should be 100% ownership. It says وَمَانَ تَمَامُ الْمِلْك, and the meaning of 100% ownership is that أَلَّا يَتَعَلَّقُ بِهِ حَقُّ غَيْرِهِ. Someone else's rights must not be mixed in with that wealth that we're talking about, that we want to extract zakat from. Meaning your share, whatever share is that you say is yours, then it must be yours 100%. Even if that share that is 100% of yours is part of a community of wealth, a wealth or wealth owned by a community, no problem. That your own share that you say is yours, Allah yata'allaqu bihi haqqu ghayrihi. There should be no one's rights mixed with it. That is when your claim that it is yours is valid. بحيث يكون له تصرف فيه. And then you have tasarruf fee. You have jurisdiction. If you like, you give it out. If you like, you do anything with it. This is your wealth. That is the type of wealth that is zakatable. So you see, in two things here, tasarruf, being able to, exercise full jurisdiction on it, and ownership are combined, here. Now, so the Sheikh Rahimahullah says, فَلَا زَكَاءَ عَلَى سَيِّدٍ فِي دَيْنِ كِتَابَةٍ فِي دَيْنِ الْكِتَابَةِ. If an owner enters into a contract with his slave that I will free you if you're able to raise X amount of money for me. So that money, let's say it's 1,000,000 dirhams, mathalan. That money is not zakatable because it is potential wealth. It is not real wealth. It is on the day that it arrives and reaches the nisab or above it that it becomes zakatable. So for that we can say, but you've entered into a contract just that is going to give you 1,000,000 dirham. So give us 2.5%, of that. The money has not arrived. While in Nuqsan milk, so apart from the money just being potential, wealth, there's also Nuqsan al-milk. And remember, full ownership is this fourth point that we're looking at now. There is a defect in the ownership. The money has not gone into the possession of the owner of the slave. In fact, even the slave that is going to give it has not yet gotten the money. So there's no milk, there's no ownership. فإن السيد إذا باع مملوكه بالدراهم على نفسه وبقيت عند إذا مملوكه المكاتب سنة فلا زكاة فيها. So it doesn't matter about the time that you entered into this contract with your slave to free him for 1 million, and it's now 1 year since that contract. So give us 2.5%. Again, it is potential wealth and it has not been realized. It has not been realized. And this shows us the rifq of Islam. This unrealized wealth, there are in many places in the West. In some places in the West, they tax it. There's a name they give to it. I can't remember exactly the name, but it's on tax on potential wealth. Yeah, the owner has not gotten it yet. So you own this company based on this, that you pay this, and of course, there's no certainty that you get it. Okay. Now, so it said, "Wala zakah fi waqf ala ghayri mu'ayyan." So because of ownership, there's also no zakah on money that belongs to a non-specific person. Kal-waqf ala al-fuqara. For instance, someone dies, and before he died, he gave created a waqf, a trust fund. And he said, this waqf is for who? Al-Fuqara, the poor people. If he had said, oh, this waqf is for Mustapha, Alhamdulillah. But he didn't say that. So who are we going to extract the zakat from? Remember, Islam, so it has to be an entity. The waqf is not a Muslim. It's not a living thing, not to talk of a human being or Muslim. So therefore, we can't extract, in this case. There's also, that is it. Or somebody says, oh, this trust is to be used to build, mosques, and other examples like that. In the same under the same heading of full ownership, we say this is also the case of al-hubub wa thimar, seeds and and fruits, i.e. farm produce. Either bada'a salahuha, when they become ripe, wajaba fiha zakah, then to pay zakah becomes compulsory. Immediately they become ripe, then zakah becomes, compulsory on them. But they are still on the trees, they are still on the plants, and that are grown. They haven't been harvested yet. So even though zakah has become compulsory for the person to pay, that collection will wait until it is harvested. ولكن لا يستقر الوجوب إلا بتمكن منها. So the implementation of that compulsion to extract zakah from those farm produce will not hold until those farm produce persist up till the term of collection. Because you harvest them, then you bag them and all that, weigh them, or measure them. That is when you know, when you measure them, that not weigh, you measure, that is when you know that, oh, this farm produce is either 5 awsuq or above. And this is what we are to extract, from it in zakah. Now, so he said, فَمَا دَامَتْ عَلَى رُؤُوسِ الشَّجَرِ أَوْ عَلَى رُؤُوسِ الزَّرْعِ فَإِنَّهُ لَا يتمكن منها تمكنا تاما. So as long as the fruits remain on the trees, then you don't have full ownership of it. The farmer doesn't have full ownership of it. Locusts can come and devour everything. But when he has harvested and bagged them and everything, stored them, then he has full ownership of them. Then this topic that we're talking about of full ownership. So in all its ramifications, that these are just examples, they're not limited to them. In all possible ways that one can gain ownership of something, zakat will only be due on it if that ownership is full 100%, and you can exercise 100% jurisdiction on that thing, and that thing persists in your ownership up until it is submitted. The zakat from it is submitted to the zakat authorities or the recipients. So you see these things that are grouped together, we separated them for clarity. Ashart al-Khamis, the fifth, as the Sheikh mentioned, said, Malju al-Hawl fi ghayri mu'ashshar, for 1 year to pass with respect to the things that are not 10%ers. The 10%ers are those types of wealth that are zakatable, that 10% or a factor of 10% is what is to be extracted from them. So, for instance, farm produce. If you irrigate the farm yourself, then you pay 5%. It's a factor of 10%, half of 10%. If it is naturally, irrigated, then you pay 10%, out of that. So, Madhul Hawl, one lunar calendar going by, passing by. Evidence for this is the hadith of our mother, Aisha radiallahu anha, where she said, the Prophet Sami'tu Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam yaqul, I heard the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam saying, La zakah fi malin hatta yahulu alayhi al-hawl, that there's no zakah on until one lunar calendar passes over it. Wali hadith Ali radiallahu anhu wa fihi, and also there's a hadith of Ali radiallahu anhu where he said, وَلَيْسَ فِي مَالٍ زَكَاةٍ حَتَّى يَحُولُ عَلَيْهِ الْحَوْلِ. There is no zakah on wealth until 1 year, 1 lunar year has passed over it. And the other, is another hadith. Let's pick one more. The hadith of Umar, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma. He said that قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, Man istafada malan, whoever gets wealth, maybe someone died and you inherited wealth from him, are you to pay immediately you inherit the wealth? No. It says fala zakah alayhi, there's no zakah on that money. Hatta yahulu alayhi al-hawl inda rabbih, until that money spends 1 lunar calendar in the possession of its owner, Rabbi. So that's with it. So this is in terms of 1 hawl. However, for things like rikaz, as we said, treasure that we discovered, and we find evidence that that treasure belonged to the time of Jahiliyyah, and this very treasure was on land, not in the sea, then this is referred to as rikaz. So immediately you find it, you pay 1/5 out of the 20%, and that is, there's no 1 year to pass. Of course, if it is something, maybe for instance, you discovered a treasure chest of gold from the days of Jahiliyyah, immediately you find it, it is called rikaz. Then you pay 1/5 of it to the Muslim coffers, 20%. The remaining 80%, from the day you found it, you begin to count 1 year. When it's now 1 year from that, and you still have it in your possession, or any quantity of it that is above equal to or above the nisab, then you pay 2.5%. After that 1 year, at the end of that 1 year, it won't be gathered as rikaz anymore. It is now gold that you own. Now, ويستثنى الأشياء لا يشترط لها تمام الحول وهي على النحو الآتي. So exempted from this, or not part of these types of wealth that you don't have to wait for a year. The al-mu'ashar are those where you do not wait for a year. Fiat money, gold and silver, you wait for a year. You wait for a year. However, for al-rikaz, you don't wait for a year. Al-ma'ashar, you don't wait for a year. Farm produce, you don't wait for a year. Another thing that you don't wait for a year for is nata'ij as-sa'ima. Nata'ij as-sa'ima. What is nata'ij as-sa'ima? Offsprings of non-working free-range animals that you own. Non-working free-range animals that you own. You own, an animal or set of animals, a group, flock of animals, and you are not using them to work on the farm, hurling your timber or irrigating your farm and things like that. No, you are not using them, because once you use them for that, then they are not zakatable. They are part of your the capital that you invested on the farm or the business, whatever the case may be. So if they are not working, the next thing to look at is, are they sa'ima or not? Are they free range or not? If you are, feeding them yourself exclusively, then there's no, zakat to pay on that. However, if they're eating from, natural grass and everything like that, that you didn't grow yourself, then you have to pay, then they are not, then they are regarded as free range, sa'ima. So a group of things that you don't wait for 1 year before you pay zakat on them are the offsprings of non-working free-range animals. أي أولادها لأن حول الأولاد السائمة من البهيمة الأنعام حول أمهاتها. You are to group them with their parents. How is this? If you own 30 sheep, starting from Muharram. In Muharram, you took possession of 30 sheep. They are sa'ima, they are free range, and they are not working for you. So you are supposed to start what? Counting 1 year from the day you possess them. 30 sheep. Then in Dhul-Qa'dah, the 11th month, part of this sheep gave birth, and you now have a total of 40 sheep. Then Dhul-Hijjah arrives. 12 lunar months have passed, and zakah is now due. Are you to pay zakah on just the 30 that you got in Muharram, or you are to include the offsprings? If it is just the 30 that you got in Muharram, then you are not yet zakatable, because it's less than 40 sheep. If you count the 30 that you got since Muharram, plus their offsprings that were born in Dhul-Qa'dah, then they become 40. That is when you become zakatable. So the latter option is what the Sharia says. So an-nata'ij, our awlad as-sa'ima, the offsprings of non-working free-range animals are to be counted along with their parents. Along with their parents. Now, the same thing happens to money. And this is important that we note, which is the third thing that we don't do what? We don't wait for a year for. And that is rubhu tijarati hawluhu hawlu ra's al-mal. The profit from a business enterprise its howl, the time when when zakat is due on it, is the time when zakat is due on the parents, that is the capital that you invested. So, for instance, I'm trading in currencies between dirham and dollars. So I sell dirham and I get dollars. So at a point in time in Muharram, my wealth, my fiat money became zakatable, reached the nisab. So I continue, so I start counting. Then profits, keeps coming in, after it has reached the nisab. Profit keeps coming in after it has reached the nisab. This profit is from the initial capital, not another wealth that has come in. Then when it is Dhul Hijjah, I will pay money, not on the initial capital that I started business with, but that capital plus all the profit that have come in after. I won't say, a profit of 2% came in Safar, so I'll start counting the howl of that profit from Safar. No. So just like animals, the profit also that comes in from a particular type of wealth is to be grouped with that particular type of wealth, the capital, when it is time to pay zakah on that. But it's not the case when it is additional source. I have wealth, let's say 85 grams of gold that has reached the nisab. So I begin to count. I got that in Muharram. Then my granny died, and my mother died, and I inherited, another 85 grams of gold from her. The 85 grams that I inherited from her, I will start counting the howl for it, the year for it, when I gain possession of that wealth. I won't add it to the 85 that I have, because the source, it's a different revenue stream. It's a different revenue, stream. Even if it's the same revenue stream, it is not from that. This inherited 85 grams is not from the 85 grams that I had before. The same, when you look at salary, every month you are paid. It's the same revenue stream. But one salary is not born out of the previous salary. So you do not combine them. Each one of them have their own, howl. Once, and you start counting the howl when the wealth has reached the nisab. Now that, let's say, you are paid in gold, for instance, you get 5 grams, today. You start counting howl for it. No, you don't start counting howl until it has reached 85 grams. Until it has reached 85 grams. So when it reaches 85 grams, let's say that's your salary, then you now start counting 1 year from that point. Salaries that come in, afterwards, you start counting their own howl to when they came in. So in January, your total salary that you've saved up reached 85 grams of gold, the equivalent of 85 grams of gold. So you start counting howl for that 85 grams of gold. So Safar, another salary came in. You don't add it to the 85. It will be separate, and you start counting howl for that one. However, as we said in one of the previous classes, that if you wish, when it is time to pay zakah on the gold that reached 85 in Muharram, that you can decide to pay for every other thing. It goes back to the hadith of Al-Abbas. So this is the thing on that. Then we talk about rikaz. When you get rikaz, وفي الركاز الخمس. Rikaz, you pay 1/5. That is 20% on it. Another al-khamis, so you don't wait a year also. Immediately you find it, that is when you pay it. ولأن وجوده يشبه ثمار والحبوب الخارجة من الأرض. Because when you discover it is likened to what happens when you harvest, your farm produce. So you're harvesting it from the ground. For your farm produce, the time that you harvest that you pay. So this one too, you're harvesting it from the ground, so to say. So immediately you discover it, that's when you pay on it. Al-khamis al-ma'din, wa huwa kullu ma kharaja min al-ard mimma la yukhlaq fiha min ghayriha mimma lahu qima. So any other thing, this is a precious, metals, or not only metals, precious things extracted from the earth, whether it is gold, whether it is silver, whether it is sulfur, whether it is crude oil, whether it is, whatever, there's different opinions among the scholars with regards to, are you to limit it to only things that are metallic? Are you to limit it to only things that are solid, or aqueous, solutions, or other things, gas or anything like that is also included. Allahu A'lam, the more correct opinion of the scholars is that whatever you extract from the earth that is not, sand, and it has value, then falls into this category. Kal-hadith wal-yakut, they're given different types of things, iron and gold, that can be extracted from, the earth. So these ones also, you don't wait for a year. You don't wait for a year, because it's, again, likened to you harvesting something from the ground. So it says, فَإِذَا وَجَدَ الْإِنسَانِ مَعْدِنًا يَبْلُغُ نِصَابًا فَيَجِبُ أَدَاءُ الزَّكَاةِ فَوْرًا. Whenever you discover any of these things, it is not recaz. You find, crude oil in your backyard. If the government allows you to take possession of it, then it is not recaz. Nobody buried it there. It wasn't that people in the days of Jahiliyyah buried it there. No. That's a different distinction between recaz and other, buried things. So buried things can be of three things. It could be Allah that put it there. Like in the case of your crude oil, your gas, your sulfur, your whatever, iron, and all that, coal, all that. Or it could be someone or some people during time of Islam that, buried it there. Then if it is that, then it goes into, if it is, at the time where we can identify, the people who own it, then it should be given to those people. If it cannot be identified, the owners cannot be identified, then it goes into the coffers of the Muslim state, or the person who finds it rather, benefits from it. This is, lost and found, property. Lost and found property. Then the third is rikaz, something that was buried during the time of Jahiliyyah, and you now, discovered it. In lost and found, if you don't find the person and you now, gain possession, you announce for a year, and you don't find, the owners, and you now use it. Whenever you find, the owner comes and says, oh, that thing that you found 10 years ago, it's mine. This is the evidence, and it's sahih. Then you have to give them back their thing. Now, it's only going to be yours permanently, if permanently nobody who owns it comes up to claim it. So inshallah, we'll stop here. So these are the things that are exempted from 1 year passing over them before we pay zakat. All other things, you pay zakat on them in 1 year. These 4 things again are al-ma'ashar, farm produce, that you pay 10% or 5% on, and nata'ij as-sa'ima, the offsprings of non-working farm, non-working free-range animals, and the profit generated from a particular type of wealth. They are, in these 2 cases, the offerings of non-working free-range animals and profit, they are to be counted. Their howl is the howl of that which gave birth to them. And rikaz, treasure that is buried during the time of Jahiliyyah that one finds, you pay zakat on it immediately, don't wait a year. Likewise, ma'adin, any other thing of value extracted from the earth, you pay zakat on it immediately, you discover it also. So inshallah, this and in this last category, let's say you discovered crude oil and the government allows you to, pay, zakat, and the government allows you to keep it. Then you pay the zakat, on it. Now you pay zakat on it, but after that, it is now in your possession. After that, it is now in your possession. So the next year, you are not going to rediscover that same crude oil. So what you do with the crude oil, you are now selling and things like that, then your zakat will be on the wealth that you gain from selling it. Because crude oil itself is not, zakatable. It's not one of the things that you pay zakat on. So we'll stop here, inshallah. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.